Good evening. Hope all of you are doing well. Tonight we're going to be starting a new parak in Maseches Yoma, parak Birishona, and this begins at the very top of Daf Chaf Beis Amud Aleph. And today we're going to learn a host of sugyas, not all one topic, but a variety of topics. Starting at a fresh Mishnah, top line, first word Chaf Beis Amud Aleph. Here we go. Birishona, Kol Mi Sherotze Litrom Mizbeach Torah. In the beginning, in the early times of the Mikdash, anyone who wanted to do the Trumas Hadeshin was welcome to Torah, and they could go and they could remove the ashes on their own, no problem. But when there were a lot of Kohanim, Ratzin ve'olin bekevesh, then they'd mamish have a race, like ready, set, go, and they'd run up the ramp, and whoever got there first, got there first. Once they got to the goal pad, which was a 4x4 amma, we'll see exactly where this was, then that person got to do the Trumas Hadeshin. What would happen if two people got there at exactly the same time? Sahamimuna, the one who is running things in the Beis Hamikdash, Amar lehen hatzbiu. You guys are going to need to put out your fingers, and the way it would work is that he'd pick a number, and let's say one coin had out one finger, and another coin had out two fingers, and another one had out one, two, and then they'd tally until they got to the number. Where it's like hot potato, wherever it lands, that's the one who got to do it. So they'd put out either one or two fingers. And one was not allowed to extend their thumb in the Beis Hamikdash. Rashi gives an explanation of why, based on the Gemara, which we'll see a little bit later. Maisa, the story in the halfway through the Mishnah, 6-7 lines down. There were two people running neck and neck, and this guy drops a little bit of the old elbow, like right as he's getting to the top of the ramp, and this guy goes flying off the ramp, and he breaks his leg. So once this happened, then the Chachamim were like, all right, this whole racing idea, having the whole race is not a good idea, the Beit HaMikdash. Remember that it's slippery. They have like animal fat everywhere, right? It's like they're barefoot, right? Nobody's wearing like the latest, best grip shoes. The Kevan Shero Bezdin Sheboinli De Sakana, because Bezdin saw that there were some dangers involved with this process of the Trumas Hadeshin, of how to get to the Trumas Hadeshin. They then decided it would be a lottery. Shalom Yisrael, nobody has to run. Everybody stick their name in a hat, pull out the name, whoever it was, is this coin or that coin, they got to do it. Arba Paisos, Hayusham, Vizeha Paisarishan. This would be the first of the 4 Paisos that were done. The Gemara opened quarter of the way down, Kaf Beis Madalava Meikara. My time, Rabban and Paisa. Why in the beginning did they make this race? That the whole thing is crazy to start. Just everything else is bepious. Do this bepious also. Why is it not done with the lottery? The Gemara is going to present 2 answers. So we're going to answer this question twice over. Here's answer number 1. 3 lines into the Gemara. Kaf Beis Madalava, 1/3 of the way down. Meikara. Savor Kaven de Avodas Laila, who initially they thought by the Trumas Hadeshin, you have to wake up in the middle of the night to do it. Remember, we said in the previous Mishnah that on a regular night, you'd have to wake up either just before or just after Kriyat HaGever, when the sun would come up or when the rooster would roost, whatever it would be. That's when we would do it. So Savor Kaven de Avodas Laila, lo chashiva lahu velo asu. We would have thought that no one would have been interested in doing it. Kaven de chazu. Once we saw that people were showing up, and it was starting to create a dangerous situation, then they shifted gears. Again, you have to remember that this was an evolution. We look at it now after the fact and say they did lotteries. Yeah, but they had to make a decision along the way about how they were going to run the Beis HaMikdash. Like, nobody's going to want to do Trumas Hadeshin. You got to set your alarm for 3 a.m. It's tough to tear yourself out of bed. No one's going to do it. 3 a.m., the whole chevra is standing there waiting to go. Oh, okay, ready? Race. No, I guess you just shove someone off. Okay, fine. Let's do a pious. So that's answer number 1. Asks the Gemara on answer number 1. We have other things that are done late at night. The last thing that we do is the Evarim and Pedarim, and that we did a pious for. So you were going to say that the Trumas Hadeshin is very late at night, and no one's going to want to be there. The Evarim and Pedarim are in a similar camp. Says the Gemara. No, it's Sof Avodah Diyamama, who really, it's just the end of the day. It's much easier at the end. So you have a meeting at the end of the day. You stay an hour later. It's not as bad as tearing yourself out of bed at 3 a.m. So says the Gemara, you can't compare the case of Trumas Hadeshin, where the Havamina was at least, that you would not be interested in doing it, whereas by the Evarim and Pedarim, which were just at the end of the workday, that you would be interested in doing it. Hainami, says the Gemara, by Trumas Hadeshin as well. We could look at the Trumas Hadeshin as Tchilas Avoda Diyamamahu. Maybe we could look at, just like you're saying that the Evarim and Pedarim were the end of the workday, maybe you could argue on the flip side that the Trumas Hadeshin is like the beginning of the workday. Tchilas Avoda Diyamamahi. The Amar Rav Yochanan, halfway down, the Amar Rav Yochanan, how do we where is the precedent, I should say, that we can see that Trumas Hadeshen is connected to the morning avoda from a very halachic realm. Damar Rabbi Yochanan, Kidesh Yadav l'Trumas Hadeshen l'machar ein tzarech l'kadesh shekvar kidesh mitchilas avoda. Let's say you wake up at 3 a.m. to do the Trumas Hadeshen. Sun doesn't rise for a while. You get up, and in order to do any avoda, kiddush yadayim v'raglayim from the shiur, obviously that's a staple in the Beis Hamikdash. So you decide you're the one who wins, and you wash netilat yadayim. What's the halacha? And when the sun comes up and you're doing the avoda, you don't have to do kiddush yadayim v'raglayim again. What does that show you, according to Rabbi Yochanan? That the Trumas Hadeshen is really the beginning of the morning. In which case, why should it be any different than the avoda, which is at the end of the day, the Avarim? We're back to our questions. It says the Gemara, you misunderstood Rabbi Yochanan. All Rabbi Yochanan said is that it's not that the Trumas Hadeshen is step number 1 in the morning. It's not that it's connected to the morning avoda. It just happens to be that you already washed practical. You already washed your hands, so you're done. So says the Gemara that therefore there's still a distinction. Now, that was all answer number 1. The second approach that we're going to say, again, our question, if you just flip back to the Gemara or look back to the Gemara's opening, we asked, why was there no pious from the beginning? So halfway down, because it's so hard to wake up, it's easy to stay asleep. Lo asu, we thought no one would show up. Because people started showing up and they started shoving each other off of the ramps, or at least this one episode, therefore they decided to do the pious. And on this second answer, the Gemara asks a question. It's also late in the afternoon, very, very late. It's dark out already. So it says the Gemara, if there's an Onesh Shena, but the Kinu L'Rabbanan Paisa. So we see that there's a pious, there was a lottery that was done by Varim and Pidarim, that was also at night. The answer is the Gemara with a psychology, or maybe I should just say a reality, that I think we could all agree to. Shiny migna mimeka. It's different just wanting to go to bed and having to tear yourself out of bed once you've been to sleep. Something it all resonates with us. So migna means to lie down. Technically, it just means sleeping under the circumstances. And mekam lakum, to get up in the morning. So it says the Gemara, by the Trumas Hadeshen, where you have to tear yourself out of bed. It's the middle of the night or the middle of the morning, depending on what part of the year you're in. So then that's much more difficult. And by the Avarim and Pidarim, it's not as bad. It's not as bad. You can push yourself to stay up a little bit later. Okay, that's our question and 2 answers of the Gemara. We're 2/3 of the way down, and the Gemara says about this approach that we just said in our mission about both approaches, that there was a pious that was added. So the Gemara says, "V'takanta lahach gisahu." You think that this takana was only for the sake of Trumas Hadeshen, that we should have a pious for Trumas Hadeshen? No, takanta lahai gisa havai. It really had a little bit more going on there. The pious didn't only include Trumas Hadeshen. Tanya, the Brisa writes, "Misha zacha." B'trumas Hadeshen, zacha b'sidur ma'arochav shnei gizrei eitzim. We started our mission to say that when you do Trumas Hadeshen, it was dangerous, so they put in a pious. So says the Gemara, it wasn't only for Trumas Hadeshen, because there was also the ma'arach and the shnei gizrei. You got to set up the pyre. You got to set up all the wood for the mizbeach. So says the Gemara, it's not so clean cut. Our mission is not so clear. Answers the Gemara, Amar Ravashi shtei takanos havu. Really, it was 2 takanos woven into one. Follow the flow. Simple, clear. Like we said, we didn't think people were going to show up in the first place for the Trumas Hadeshen. Once people did start showing up for the Trumas Hadeshen and people started getting hurt, then takinu la paisa. But then once they made the pice, everyone was like, I'm not going to win this. It's like buying a lottery ticket. Oh, the odds are only 1 in a million. That's not good odds. That's not a reason to buy a lottery ticket. So they're all like, I'd rather sleep. Thank you very much. I'm not going to win anyways. I'm not even putting my name in the raffle. So it says that the Gemara came to asu. Now that they made it into a pious to prevent people from getting hurt, now no one's signing up for the pious for the Trumas Hadeshen. Amre mi yemar de misramelam. They're all saying like, is it going to be me? I'd rather sleep. Then they added, oh no, you're going to want to stick your name in the hat for this. Why? Because Misha Zacha the Trumas Hadeshen Yizke as well. Besidur ma'arachov shnei gizrei eitzim ki echad denaisu udbnei faisu. So yes, you're right. Our Mishnah is layer number 1. But once they saw that the people were getting injured, they switched from the running race to the lottery. When they got to the lottery, everyone's like, there's no way I'm going to win. I'm not even putting my name in the ring. And then they're like, we need someone to do the Trumas Hadeshen. Let's sweeten the pot. So then they said, it's not just Trumas Hadeshen, it's also the Ma'arach and the Shnei Gizrei Eitzim. Okay, I'll get out of bed for that. That's fine. Put your name in the hat. And that's how they solved this problem. That brings us toward the bottom of the page, 5 lines from the bottom at the 2 dots. Our Mishnah said Vizmanche and Merubin that they would run up the ramp. This is still an iteration number 1 of the Mishnah. Of course, we know how we paskin that it's papayas, but we wanted to understand that even at that time, what did it mean? B'dalad amos, says the Gemara. 4 lines from the bottom, Amar Papa, Pshitali Arba Amos to Aralo. We're not talking about the 4 Amos that are on the ground. Why? Because of the language of the Mishnah. Quote, Ratzin V'ol Mekevesh Tanan. That's what the Mishnah writes, that we're talking about the ramp. Kamai Sanamilo. We're also not talking about the first 4 Amos of the ramp, because Ratzin V'ol Mekevesh Tanan, V'hadar Kol HaKodem Es Chavero. You had to run up the ramp and then beat your friend, which means it couldn't be the bottom part of the ramp. The Beini Beini Namilo. It also can't be that it's talking about the middle of the ramp, Delo Masai Mamilsa, because there's no lines of demarcation. It's not like a 50-yard line. You're not racing to a line. So there was nothing on the ramp to indicate that you won. So it must be something at the top of the ramp. Shita, 2 lines from the bottom. Shita li, the gabe mizbeach tnan. We must have been talking about the mizbeach. Once you get to the top, it is a 4 square amos. You got to beat your friend. Ask the Gemara a practical question, and the Gemara is going to answer with a teku. Last line. Kaf Beis Amud Aleph. When our Mishnah says that they raced up and they had to get to the 4 amos, was it Bahade Ama Yesod Ama Sovev? Were we talking about the places that were at the outer ring? I think ring. It's a square. At the outer part of the square of the top of the mizbech. Dilma bar me'ama, to exclude Yesod bar me'ama Yesod Ama Sovev teku, and we don't know the answer to that question. That brings us to the 2 dots at the top of Kav Beis Amud Beis. V'im hayushnein and shavim. We said in our Mishnah that if they were equals, then Amamuna Omer lahem atzbiyu, that everyone should put out a finger. He'll pick a number out of a hat. Let's say 15. 1. You got 1 finger out. 1. The other guy's got 2. 1, 2, 3. Keep going around until he stops at 15. Wherever he stops, that person would be the one. So says the Gemara, Tana hotziu es be'oseichem leminyan. They were putting out their fingers for what purpose? So that the Kohen could count the fingers out to get to the right person, to get to the final person. Asks the Gemara, V'nimnin hu ledidhu. Look at the person, say, you're a person, number 1. Answers the Gemara, famous, Misayeya le the Rabbi Yitzchak, Amar Rabbi Yitzchak, Aser limnos es Yisrael. Afilu lidvar mitzvah, Dichsi v'yivkedem bavazek. That they were counted bavazek. We are understanding in our Havamina right now that bavazek means shards, broken pieces of pottery. Maskif lo Ravashi, mimai dahai bazek, lashon de mivzaku. How do we know that it's broken pottery? Vidilma shema de matahu. Maybe it's the name of the city. Dichsi vayimtzeu adoni vezek. That's the name of a location. So maybe when the pasuk says vayivkedem bevezek, it doesn't mean that they were counted with shards, but they were actually counted with something else, because Vezek's not actually a place. Elamehacha, says the Gemara 8, 9 lines down, it must be that the source as to how we know we're not supposed to count is based on another pasuk. They were counted with a tlet, with a small animal. Amar Rebbe Lazar, Kol Amones Yisrael over Belav, Shneimar v'Hayam Mispar Bnei Yisrael Kechol Hayam Asher Lo Yimad. This is a pasuk in Tanakh. We have a principle in halacha that divrei Torah, midivrei Kabbalah, lo yalfina, that you cannot learn out of din d'oraisa. So when the Gemara says that you violated something here, that you're over belav, and then it quotes a pasuk midirabana, and it quotes a pasuk out of Tanakh, l'chora, we're not talking about isurei d'oraisa here. That's the pashtus of the Gemara. And that's what the pasuk reads here, that kol amonis is over belav, shenemar v'yam yispar b'nei Yisrael k'chol ha'em asher lo yimad. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak Amar over b'shnei lav, and really it's 2, the one that we said, and shenemar, the second one, lo yimad v'lo yisafer. So that's basically, it's not a good idea to count. That's why we do, there's a lot of different things that people do. They do the famous one, Hoshiach Tamecha, and they also do the bracha of Al Natilas Yadayim, which is also 10 words, whatever it is. Oh, Hamotzi Lach Min Haaretz. It's not Al Natilas Yadayim. I think that one's it. I didn't count that. I'm not going to do it right now, but you can count later. Whichever one it is, it's up to 10. And we're not counting people. We're counting something secondary to the person. Next part of the Gemara, 1/3 of the way down. Amar Rav Shmuel Bar Nachmania, Rav Yonasan, Rami. He puts 2 psukim, one against another, doesn't understand them. Ksiv, one pasuk reads, "V'hayam mispar bnei Yisrael kechol hayam," and that the Jewish people are countable, as are the grains of sand. Is that countable or not countable? I could have argued that it's not countable because it would take a very long time. Take a look at Rashi. Rashi is 7 lines down. Dibur hamaschil, 6 lines down. Dibur hamaschil ksiv v'hayam mispar bnei Yisrael kechol hayam alma islahu minyan. Wow, that is a long Sunday afternoon. 1, 2, but the Gemara is not using it as a homily. It's meant to be literally like the grains of sand on the beach. We'll see, but there's another conflicting pasuk, asher lo yimad v'lo yisafer. We would have thought, without hearing the Gemara's juxtaposition of these two psukim, we would have thought that it was just saying, okay, it's a lot of people, which we're not right now. And it says the Gemara, how do we deal with this contradiction in psukim? Two answers. Number one, lokasha, 1/3 of the way down, kam bizman shitros and start the makom, kam bizman she'ein osin ritzono shel makom. When the Jews are doing the ritzono shel makom, then they're lo yimad v'lo yisafer. When they're not, then they are countable. Then they are kechol asher al smasayim. Rebbe Amar, mishum Abba Yossi, ben dustay lokasha, kam b'dei adam, kam b'dei shemayim. One is b'dei adam. Right? Well, you're not really able to count, and the other is B'dei Shemayim. The Kodesh Baruch Hu knows all the numbers. You don't always know who's Jewish. You don't always know. I had a case like this. I have shared this story before. The Irish Catholic woman. I'm Irish Catholic. My mother's Irish Catholic. The whole Gans Mishpacha. And then this baby was 6 weeks old. And then she calls me and she's like, by the way, Rabbi, have you ever heard of the custom of lighting candles on Friday night? I'm like, that's pretty well. I corrected her. I'm like, it's actually a little bit before Friday night. It's before the sun sets. Why are you asking me? She's like, my grandmother told me this story that when she was a little girl, that she used to light candles on Fridays before the Sabbath came in. Like, first of all, which side of the family? Aleph. She said it's her mother's mother, and I said, did your mother's mother grow up in Eastern Europe in the 30s and 40s? She's like, why do you know that? I said, is your grandmother alive? She said, yeah, my grandmother's alive. I said, you need to go ask her if she was put into a convent as a little girl. The Kachava. She went to this home. She went to her grandmother, and she said, did you get put into a convent as a little child? This woman lives in Wheeling, Illinois. She has 5 kids. All of them are Yidden. We did a beautiful bris, NCSY, Sandig, Bris Mila, Brachos, B'Shem U'Malchus. You don't always know who's Jewish. That's got to be Klapei Shmaya. The actual count, we don't know. We can't control that piece because there are things that happen that we have no idea what's going on. So that's why the Gemara is making such a distinction here, that we are incapable of giving an accurate count. Alachas kama v'kama today. He elef alfei alafim, with intermarriage rates as they are, people thinking they're Jewish when they're not. Okay. Says the Gemara a little bit further down. We're about 5-6 lines before the wide lines. Amar Rav Nahilai bar Idi Amar Shmuel. Kevan shenismana adam parnas al tzibur misasher. Once a person becomes in charge of the tzibur, they become wealthy. How do we know? That they, again, we're going with our Havamina, that they were counted with bezek, they were counted with shards of pottery. And in the end, it says they weren't counted with shards of anything. They were counted by animal. Animals are much more expensive. Says maybe it was their animals that they were counting. But how do you know from there that there was any reason to assume that they're wealthy, or what does the one thing have to do with the other? If you understand the word vezek to mean pottery, why did the Gemara change it from pottery to tzlaim? It must be that the rich guy was handing out all the time. You get a sheep, and you get a sheep, and then 1, 2, 3, and he counts like that. He counts the sheep. So that's what the Gemara says. Next section, 3 lines before the Y lines. What's that? I didn't cross my mind once to think that way. Yeah. But Yireh Banacha, the pasuk says that there was an argument by the Nachal. What is that talking about? So the Gemara, Derech Jewish, explains as follows. Amar Rav Mani, halfway down, Amar Rav Mani al Iskei Nachal. What was going on? Kadosh Baruch Hu was talking to Shaul. B'shash Amar Kadosh Baruch Hu l'Shaul lech v'kisas Amalek. We know, of course, that there's a tzivui, a mitzvah d'oraisa, to erase the nation of Amalek, and that included Anashim Nashim B'taf, and the animals. The pasuk on the side here quotes all of that. Amar Uman Nefesh Achas. So Shaul pushes back on a Kadosh Baruch Hu. He says, Uman Nefesh Achas Amra Torah Have Egla Arufa. We know that even by one person who dies, and if the person dies in between a couple of cities, we're a little bit torn about who's responsible to bury the person. So we do this very unique halach of Egla Arufa. All the more so you're killing all these people right enough. We're going to have so many questions that we're going to have to deal with. Not only that, fine, I could understand a human being is going to be chote. You're going to tell me that the animal violated an avera? Everyone has their collections of mitzvos. Jews have their collection of mitzvos. Goyim have their requirements for mitzvos. Shem mitzvos b'nei noach. Avadim, not whatever it is. Everybody has their. But an animal doesn't have any chiyuv for mitzvos. There are chiyuv that they should be shovet on Shabbos, but be'etzem the animal has nothing to worry about. So what chayt are we talking about? Not only that, even gedolim chatuk, tanam chatuk, little children. Children are pure. They can't do things wrong. So then the Gemara pushes back. HaKadosh Baruch Hu sends out a baskol. First of the longest lines in the Gemara, Yotzat baskol v'amar lo al titzadik harbe. Don't be more righteous than me, says Hashem to Shaul. I got this down. I'm telling you what I need you to do right now. I'm not saying it's easy, but this is the tzivui. Don't be more righteous than I am. There's a whole story where Shaul was responsible for the killing of 70 Kohanim in the city of Nov, and this was part of that story. He sent Doeg to go do that job. At that time, you're taking this too far. A whole story that they thought that the Kohanim in Nov were supporting David, and Shaul thought David was out to kill Shaul, so Shaul was trying to kill David. And when Shaul thought that David was conspiring with the Kohanim and Nov, Shaul wiped him out. And we'll see shortly, he was punished for it. And on that note, the Gemara continues 2/3 of the way down, 4 lines into the white lines. Amar Rav Huna, Kama lo chali, how great is it with no illness, below margish, without a lot of negative feelings, gavra de mare saya, one who has the help of their master, capital M, has the help of a Kodesh Baruch Hu. Shaul ba'achas, also Shaul lacked a little bit of emunah. Again, on Basher Husham, it's not a judgment, it's what the Gemara says. Also, when he was given a consequence, and David b'shtayim v'lo asalo, David did 2 things wrong, and he didn't get a consequence for it. He was more calm about it. Shaul ba'achas, what one sin did he do? Ma'aseh de Agag, right? That he didn't kill Agag. He left that one person standing from Amalek. That was a big problem. Why do you say that that's why he was punished? Maybe it was because of another Avera that he did, which we just learned about. He also killed the 70 Kohanim, which was wrong. First of all, he believed in the Lashon Hara. Second of all, he killed 70 innocent people. That's huge crime. Says the Gemara, yes, you're right that was an Avera. But the dagger, what really put Shaul in a bad place with the Kodesh Baruch Hu was this. That's when HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, I regret. I picked the wrong guy. He wasn't strong enough to do it. So then he's out. David b'shtayim mai ninhu. What were the 2 averos that David did? To Uriah ude hasata. With Uriah, as we know, the Maaseh Bathsheba, and basically the Gemara in Gittin speaks about this, but the basic storyline about this is that we know that David and Bathsheba were together, but they were together at a time when there was a get b'tnai. When people would go out to war, they would write a get for their spouse that if, God forbid, they would be killed in war, they're retroactively divorced from beforehand, right? So then he sent Uriah to the front of the lines. So that was number 1. And Hatzata was a whole story where basically David was on Derech Yetzer Hara, the Meforshim point out that he tried to count the Jews, and then there was a whole Magefa that took place after that. So these are 2 things that he did. And how do we know that he was held safe from this? After all, he did other Averis as well. But Ikanami Maisa de Bathsheba, you spoke about Uriah. What about Bathsheba? Says the Gemara, he already got paid back for that. Hasam ifru umine, he already got punished for that. How do we know? He was paid back 4-fold. Yeled, the child that he and Bathsheba had from their act of intimacy. Amnon, Tamar, ve'Avshalom. These 4 people all had terrible things occurring to them. Says the Gemara, Hasam nami, but in the other case as well, nami ifru umine, he also got punished because what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, Vayitain Hashem davar. So it says the Gemara, there already was something bad that happened. So say, yeah, but Hasam lo ifra umigufe, that wasn't actually on his body, that was on Klal Yisrael. That when he counted the Jews behasata when he shouldn't have, he didn't get a direct consequence. The punishment happened to the Jewish people, 70,000 of whom died. Says the Gemara, Hasam nami lo ifra umigufe, even there, that wasn't on his body because says the Gemara, no, lie, it's not true. Ifru Megufe, there really was a punishment on his body. You're right that aspect of the punishment wasn't. But Damar Yehuda Marav, Shisha Chodashim Nitztara David, he had Saras. For 6 months, he had them for a very long time. And at that time, Upirshu Hemenu Sanhedrin, because he had Saras, couldn't really be around people. You're Mechutz Lamachane, Sanhedrin left, and he stalked him Hemenu Shechina, Kodesh Baruch Hu left, Yeshuv Li Yirei Ayich, Biyode Edivosayich, I want you, the wise one, Sanhedrin, come back after my Saras. And he's saying to a Kodesh Baruch Hu, bring back the joy, bring back your salvation. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Kibel David Lashon Hara, but he was Makabel Lashon Hara. Says the Gemara, no, he wasn't. Kishmol Damar Lo Kibel David Lashon Hara Machlokas, if he was Makabel Lashon Hara. Well, the Rav Nami Damar Kibel David Lashon Hara Ha'ifru Minei, and even according to Rav, who says he did speak Lashon Hara, or that he was Makabel Lashon Hara, he got a punishment for it. To Amar Yehuda Marav B'Shash Amar Lo David Mipiboshes Amarti Atav Tzivin Techalkei with Tatzadeh, because he listened to Lashon Hara, so he split up what he was giving out to Mipiboshes. And he says, Atavet Ziva, you and Ziva will split the field. And what was the punishment for that? A massive consequence, which is that Klal Yisrael were split into 2. The Malchus of Yehuda and the Malchus of Yisrael. Yatzabas kol v'amra lo, rechavam v'yeravim yechalku es ha-malchus. So yes, he already had a consequence for that. The pasuk says, Ben Shana Shaul b'malcho. Shaul was like a 1-year-old. Amar Rav Huna ki Ben Shana Shalotam Tamchet. We know that children, a 1-year-old child, what's more pure than a 1-year-old child? They don't do any averos. So says the Gemara. What does it mean? It must be that he's toim tanchet. Maski Flor of Nachman Bar Yitzchak. I mean, I could think of other things that 1-year-olds do that really aren't so pleasant. And that's what the Gemara says. They play in the dirt and they're covered in dirty diapers all day long. So it says the Gemara, that night, Rav Nachman asks this question of Ben Shana. The first sheet that says that he's a Ben Shana in Chait, but Rav Nachman's like, well, maybe he's a Ben Shana and that he's filthy. What is that's not a clean person? Says the Gemara, maybe he's a bad king. Says the Gemara, Achviu le the Rav Nachman siyuta bechelme. When he fell asleep that night, Rav Nachman had terrible, terrible dreams. Siyuta bechelme. Take a look at Rashi. A little bit more than halfway down. Dibur hamaschel siyuta. 15 lines or so from the bottom. Malachi pachad mathilanoso. In English, we would call this nightmares, but the way that it's being written up here is that there were malachi pachad, who would terrify him, just terrify him. So this is a strong language. Omar, and Rav Nachman reflected, and he said, I made a mistake. I need to answer to your bones, Shaul ben Kish. And that next night, Hadar Chaza, had the same bad dream the next night because he forgot to call him a king. So then that next night, Amar Nanesi lechem Shaul ben Kish Melech Yisrael. You're right, and I needed to refer to you as Melech Yisrael. And the next night, he didn't have any of the bad dreams. What is the reason why the Beit Shaul, that his malchus did not continue? We know why it split, because he was in Kabbalah Shnar. Why didn't it continue? Says the Gemara, he had a flawless history, he had a flawless family background. I would have thought that was an accolade. What is the problem here? Says the Gemara, the only way you can have a person who's in charge of the tzibur is if they have skeletons in the closet. Why? Because, says the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom, all of a sudden he becomes all crazed and everyone's like, hey, relax. You've got problems too. You're not Mr. Perfect. That's what the Gemara says. Turn around. You know that bag we put on your back with all the mice in it and all the rats in it and all the skeletons. Everybody's got things that are, so all of the leaders have to have that point of humility to make sure that they understand that. We're going to do one more little section stuff on the last line. Amar Rav Yehuda Marav, why was he punished? We saw some things above. One of them is because he was mochal on his own kavod as a king. People were embarrassing him. What can Shaul do? They embarrassed him. They didn't bring him gifts. And what was his response? He didn't say anything. No. When you're Melech Yisrael, you push back. In your house, you push back when someone's rude. No, you cannot talk to me that way. So you push back on that. We'll see what was the follow-up to his silence. And that caused for a lot of problems. We're going to stop here. Just one scheduling note. Next Monday night, I will not be here. I asked Rabbi Robinson what the best way is to do this. Is it better to do a blot and a half Sunday and a blot and a half Tuesday and not to have a kvius on Monday? He said, if I'm going to be gone for one day, that's fine. If I'm going to be gone for more, then I should just record that daf and send it out so people could learn the kvius. So this coming Monday, we will not have shiur in person. We will overlearn a little bit on Sunday and overlearn a little bit on Tuesday, and that should work for this trip. Wishing you all a beautiful night.
You looked it up?